Chapter 2 Freedom. As we headed south along the shoreline, the darker clouds were moving inland. Thick, fluffy white clouds patched the sky, and the clear spots were a sparkling blue. Toward the horizon, the Pacific Ocean was bathed with golden rays, piercing the clouds from the sun. To the left, the orchards of orange trees scented the air and painted the landscape into one of beauty. The old Pacific Coast Highway was almost deserted. Most cars were probably traveling the new one that was 10 miles inland. Not me. I'll take the scenic, safer route anytime. From the time we left my house, almost an hour before, conversation had been mostly about the treacherous traffic problems in Los Angeles, the terrible, soupy, smoggy air, and how Hollywood had changed since I had moved to L.A. with my family. 20 years I've been here, off and on, of course, and the only thing that hasn't changed is the name Hollywood itself. Where were you during the off times? In Mexico, Texas, all over Mexico, though. If you dislike L.A. so much, then why do you stay? Family reasons, I said. I'm the oldest grandson. My mind wandered off. Rahedra turned quiet and faced the window toward the sea. I drifted into the world of remembering and forgetting. After a while, I felt a warm tingling in my neck and the side of my face. I broke out of my daydream, turned, and saw Rahedra's eyes. I must have spaced out, I laughed, turning my attention back to the road. That was quite a daydream, she said softly. You mean you know? I mean, you read my mind again? I asked, puzzled. Kind of. You see, she said, shifting to her side, when a person is constantly watching the front entrance, it leaves their rear entrance sort of unguarded. And for a person such as I, who has studied and learned the power of telepathic conversation, it is not difficult to look in the back door and see what might be going on in the front door. Do you follow? What if I were guarding the back door too? Then it would be very difficult. Telepathy is either two or more conversing agreeably and knowingly, or sort of peeking in the back door. If someone consciously puts up mental barricades, then it is almost impossible to sense that person's thoughts. I see. I believe, too, I said boyishly. Let me ask you, I said. I'm not really a very nervous or frantic person, but now that we're getting close to them, could you fill me in a little? Now that I think about it, it's you. You are the reason I'm here. Okay, she smiled. Your name, of course, is Paul. We know that you're a writer and artist who enjoys the creative world. Your family history is somewhat vague, so mixed, she smiled. We do know you're a mutt with a lot of variety. Thanks a lot, I laughed. But isn't variety the spice of life? She joked. Speaking of variety, I sure would like something to eat, I said. There's a place a few miles up ahead that has a great selection, she said as she continued. Well, here comes the punchline. I work with an organization, a spiritually evolutionary organization. It's called Freedom. That stands for Foundation for Research, Education, Enlightenment, and Development of Mankind. It was created for people who believe in the spiritual advancement of humanity. They also expanded a research institute from the initial organization to delve into matters of telepathy, clairvoyance, reincarnation, and astral projection. They also work in the areas of psychic powers of healing and psychic energy centers around the human body, like the aura. All in all, they work in just about every area of paranormal or metaphysical science. These things that I've mentioned are just the basics, the very basis of some other fields they are experimenting with now. Are you with me? She asked searchingly. Yeah, I answered, my eyes peeled to the road. Like I said earlier, I know about all these areas. I'm not super psychic or anything, but I am aware. But where do I fit in? I questioned. Okay, I'll just say it like I was going to earlier. Just like I know it, okay? Okay. You, she said, like most everyone alive on this planet, are a product of the reincarnation cycle, which means that you have had quite a number of past lives here on Earth. I wanted to ask how she knew about my past lives in particular, but I knew the explanation would come. Besides, in all my personal and private study of the psychic, I always believed that I fit in somewhere. Where? I had never known. When? I hadn't really thought too much about that until now. Why? Destiny, I thought. Destiny. That's it, she broke into my thought. You see, you are and will be a part of this plan, this destiny. Came in my back door again, huh? It was wide open, she smiled. Okay, on with it. You were talking about my past lives and destiny. Yes, she said. But first, let me ask you, have you ever felt, or do you feel you have lived in a past life? I've never had a conscious recollection of one, but I'm strongly attached to certain eras and cultures in history, Egypt in particular, and also the late Revolutionary period and the Aztec Empire. Those are the three strongest. She smiled. I felt like a student who had just pleased the teacher with the right answer. I blushed with unusual pride-filled embarrassment. What if I told you that you did live in those eras? I think I'd ask, how did you know? And why is it important? Okay, I'll answer. First, everything that has ever been is recorded. For example, take this planet in particular. Everything that has ever happened or existed on this planet is recorded. Just like historians record history, there are great historians who keep all the records of the history of this planet. From the smallest little bug or ant to mankind, dinosaurs, everything has been recorded. This very precise record is called the Akashic record. In particular, for this planet, it is called the Earth Akashic record. The people who work with freedom have access to a sort of copy of this Akashic record. And in this record are descriptions and happenings of your past lives. Are you with me?" she inquired seriously. "Let me see. It's one of two things. Either I did something in a past life and you have come to entice me into following you to my trial, or you have come to lure me into following you to finish something I didn't finish long ago. How's that?" "Very good. Not quite right, but very good. You're not going to trial. Only you can judge yourself. That's karma. You reap from yourself what you yourself sow. And you're not quite going to finish something you started in a past life. It's more like repeating. And as far as I am concerned, I was sent to entice you, but that is because the Akashic records show us together in a few of your past lives. According to the records, we've enticed each other before." I smiled. She smiled. She pointed to a restaurant off the highway, but I just kept on driving. "I can wait. Can you?" I asked, thinking mostly of what kinds of enticing we may have done to each other before. "Sure." I kept driving. A minute of silence passed. "Aren't you going to ask?" she smiled. "Okay, what am I going to repeat that I've done before in another life?" "Dr. Gregorio will answer that a little later. He is the person in charge of this project. He works for freedom." "You mean you asked me to ask you, and you're not even going to answer?" "Take that exit," she pointed. Her smile, her eyes, made me forget my curiosity. The winding road passed through barren, deserted land, as well as thriving communities. We drove for about 15 or so miles. This area of California was beautiful but rugged. The sky was still filled with patchy clouds, and the air was fresh and clear. We kept driving, and Rahedra gave me some final instructions. I turned off the main road onto an old dirt road. After about half a mile of some wooded area, we came through a clearing, and there it was, a small building, which Rahedra said was the office. Behind the office stood a large 4-story red brick building. "That is the research building," she said. "There is a recreation area and a swimming pool farther behind a bit. The entire area is about 35 acres. "Impressive," I said. "Very impressive." There was a large tree about 500 feet from the office entrance. I pulled the car off the dirt road, stopped, and got out. I stretched out my body, which was stiff from the drive. I heard Rahedra's door open and then close. "Something wrong?" I just looked at her. Her concerned look was honest and sensitive. I was wishing we were at a party or someplace where I could have met her as a man to express my interest in her as a woman. I kicked the dirt with my feet and gazed off into the distance. This place is a lot more than I had expected. In fact, until this very moment, I hadn't really thought about what to expect. I had only thought about you, I said. "Come over here and sit down," she said, sitting herself on the grass by the tree. "Freedom," she said, "deals with paranormal sciences and anything that is not common to material or mortal life. 3 years ago, I was confronted in a similar manner to that which you've just experienced. I had gone to a psychic fair, and while there, I met Dr. Gregorio. He said that he was a clairvoyant and was attending the fair to investigate all the self-proclaimed psychics who were charging to do readings for people. He said he had the psychic ability to see truth or lies in anyone through their energy bodies and by going in their back door, so to speak. He told me he had come there to enlist people to work with freedom, which at that time had just begun. I was participating in a healing circle he was observing. When it was over, he introduced himself to me and explained his reasons for being there. He gave me his business card and told me to call him if I was interested in psychic research and development. I asked him, why me? He told me he had seen my energy fields and my aura grow much more intensely than anyone else in the healing circle. He also said he saw no skepticism or doubt in my aura while I was healing. I said I would call him. A few days later, I did. And I've been working for freedom ever since. Well, that's much easier to understand than someone coming up to you at a bus stop and talking destiny, don't you think? Sure, but... But how? I smiled, thinking I had trapped her. Remember the Earth Akashic Record? I nodded a yes. Well, according to Dr. Gregorio, some hundreds of years ago, and several thousands of years ago, Paul, your soul, your spirit, was living other lives. During each of these lives, you were involved in some situations that are supposed to repeat themselves again in the near future. Dr. Gregorio saw this. He investigated your continuous reincarnations until he found out you were living one now. He did more research and found out that I, as well, had been there with you in some of these lives. He decided destiny had brought he and I together, and that destiny would bring you together with us. What is this occurrence that is supposed to be repeated? I don't know either, she gasped. But Dr. Gregorio sent me because he knew that our souls knew each other and that because of this, you would feel attracted to me and I to you. He felt you would come here with me, but probably not with a total stranger without a past life connection. Like you, I'm in the dark about what's supposed to recur. But Dr. Gregorio is so honest and genuine. I knew he had asked of me something that could bring no wrong. So I just went ahead and did what he asked. That being, I went to L.A. to convince you to return here with me. But if it was destiny, I said, wouldn't I have come eventually? Maybe. You see, destiny can prearrange a situation, circumstance, or occurrence. But the individual outcome of the people involved is always a decision left entirely to the individual spirit. Destiny opens the door. If one chooses not to enter, then destiny changes for the individual who decided not to enter. But eventually, destiny is fulfilled in the end. You mean if I didn't want to continue on with this venture of destiny, I would not have to or be forced to? Exactly. But the destiny itself would. A few moments of silence passed. The door is open for you to walk through, she smiled. I already walked through it by going to L.A. to see you. Well, I said, Let's walk. Where's the door? I asked, smiling. You just stepped through it, she smiled. I wonder if there is any way out, if I should decide I need one. Always, she smiled. My butt is soaking wet, I laughed, getting up from the damp grass. Mine too, she smiled. Her hand reached up to me to help her up. I grasped and pulled her upward. My heart fell to the ground, as this was the first time I had actually touched her, felt her. Her hand held on to mine when I tried to let go. Let's walk, she said. How did you know that bus wasn't going to stop? I asked. And how did you know we would get wet and end up at my apartment? Well, it's not too hard to go in the back door of a busy bus driver, so I just flashed a "keep going" telepathic message to him when I saw him, and he unknowingly obeyed. It's really not that hard, just trained power of suggestion. And the getting wet, well, as much water as the curb was flooded with, and as close as we were to it, a bus driver unknowingly deciding not to stop would have been too close not to hit and send the water streaming. Agree? Yeah, I nodded. How about getting up to my place? Would you have said no, even if I hadn't talked to Destiny or asked myself? I guess not, I said, looking over her body, grinning. If you hadn't said anything, I would probably have asked you, I added. There may be some psychic things going on about, she said, but we are a man and a woman. Oh yeah, no doubt about that, I gleamed. She opened the front door of the office building, turned, and pulled me by the arms toward her. She kissed me quickly but softly, so nicely. Welcome to freedom, she said. My heart soared from my feet and flew right out the top of my head. Hey, I said, stopping our entrance. How did you know I was going to take the bus in the first place? I didn't. But if you hadn't, I probably would have followed you and arranged another destiny for us to meet by. Like walking up to you in front of your girlfriend's house.